Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026, and welcome to another episode in the People in Fundraising Weekly Social Impact Podcast. I am really honored and excited to welcome today's guest, Emily Yu, and looking forward to our conversation and having Emily share about her career with our audience. So, good afternoon to you, Emily.
Hello, Tim. Thank you so much for having me on this incredible show. It's my honor, and I'm here on behalf of Newman's own foundation and serving in my role as Chief Partnerships and Program Officer. So thank you for having me here today.
My pleasure, Emily. Thank you. And I know Newman's Own certainly is a familiar name for me with their products, but also their philanthropic endeavors over decades. And I'm just excited to have you in a few minutes talk about that component of your career and other angles as well and initiatives. So, as I do for every guest, Emily, if you can please take a few minutes to share with our audience how you entered the philanthropic sector, the partnerships sector, and fundraising in general.
Sure, happy to. My career was a little bit of a windy, perhaps not expected pathway to get to where I am today in this role with Newman's Own Foundation. But that's part of, I think, why I just keep doing what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, personally speaking, my North Star and my mission is really just this appreciation for change makers. And what change makers do to me is the highest order, demands the highest order of respect, skill, expertise. But that all takes resources, very intensive resources. You're talking about incredibly complex and entrenched issues and challenges in and with community. And so for me, having seen both, on the ground work, now being at a foundation and getting able to support the work. So having seen both sides of the coin and being on both sides of the coin, really just having this constant sort of voice on the side of my shoulder that, these folks, these issues, these organizations really need and demand and really could benefit from increased resources to tackle these challenges. So that's really the driving sort of force and North Star that makes me really proud of the work I get to do every day. So currently, that really takes the shape of trying to resource wonderful organizations across the US and beyond in their work on nutrition education, school food, indigenous food justice, and even continuing Paul Newman's legacy with the Serious Fun Children's Network of medically inclusive camps.
Yes.
And getting to do that through partnerships, through fundraising, through dynamic collaborations to make sure those great folks and communities get the resources they need to do the great work that they're doing.
Absolutely. Well stated. Thank you. How long have you been at the Newman's Own Foundation, Emily?
I've been there about 2.5 years,
Okay.
but have been in philanthropy and social impact. And even if you want to bring in some communications pieces, for close to 25 years. So
Wow.
it's been quite the journey.
Excellent. And if you can just take a few moments and share that journey in particular, like, how did you get from public relations and other facets of social impact
Sure.
into the work you're doing today?
Sure. And fun fact, like my first initial interest, I always thought I would go into something related to international relations and just really loved, forging connection, being able to engage with others, really being able to find common ground and really create social change. So that was always in the mix. I will say the form it took and the organization with which it was serving, that has changed over time. First professional career was really in public relations and getting to work on or in a field called social marketing at the time. And that
Oh,
was really supporting federal government initiatives on behavior change. So we were doing everything from raising awareness about women's heart health
Mm,
to doing specific disease-related things for Centers for Disease, CDC as it's known, and even NIH, and doing a number of things. What was great about that, and I think what some of your listeners and you yourself might appreciate, getting to do a semi deep dive. I won't even call it a deep dive, but a semi deep dive for a short amount of time into something to try to do some good, to try to have
mm,
some impact, to try to move the needle. That was always really alluring. And then
yeah.
pivoted from there after several years into the foundation world. And so from having been in with community working on these campaigns, faith-based campaigns, educational organizations, the federal government, et cetera, to then working at foundations, had a real just on the ground and in community partnerships with groups working on everything from tech for good at the
Mm,
time. I was lucky enough to get to work with Steve and Sheen Case. Steve founded AOL. And so
yeah.
those days were really quite exciting to get to work in that space, all the way to leading a funding collaborative with the de Beaumont Foundation, another great highlight of my career, I'd like to think, where I got to learn so much from dozens of communities across the country
Mm,
working on social determinants of health. And they were using philanthropic resources and dollars I was trying to help bring to the table to actually spur really underlying causes of chronic disease and issues in community. But these were
mm,
community-led efforts and from there, really found my way to Newman's Own Foundation, and skipped around here and there, but
sure.
Newman's Own Foundation is where I am now, and that really was a goal of mine in terms of finding a way to thread the needle between business and corporations and really social impact in
Yeah.
a way that felt authentic, it felt innovative and dynamic. And I can attest now being on the side of Newman's Own Foundation, it really is 100% of the profits and royalties from the food company side going over to the foundation side to support great causes. And pre my time there, but to date, between Paul Newman and the work of the foundation and the food company, over $625 million have
Yeah.
gone out to communities on social impact causes to date, just since the company, and the company only started in 1982. So it's
Wow.
been it's been quite a legacy, and I feel very honored. I am a steward of this mission and this vision of let's give it all away. So
Yes.
that's where I am today.
That is wonderful. I remember eating the Newman's Own popcorn in the 1980s. It was so good, but I remember the branding had 100% to nonprofit organizations.
Exactly.
And the let's give it all away mindset, that is just amazing. And I remember like watching in the 1990s 60 Minutes, this segment on um, the hole in the wall camps that Paul
That's
Newman had.
right. That's right.
Yeah, and so just 40 plus years later to see that legacy continue is just really incredible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it seems like, most folks have some story or some connection point, whether they met Paul Newman or not, or whether they've visited or volunteered at one of the camps, whether it's through the products. So the legacy that he has left us and that we continue today is one that we're really proud of. So thank you. And honestly, it's due to the consumers because of the model. So
Right.
really, it's the consumers of the products that make what we do possible on the foundation side.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I would love, you did a great overview of the Newman's Own Foundation uh, mission and a lot of the causes it supports. I'm curious, are you involved in assessing the needs, whether it's a domestic or international entity that needs resources, and how does that process work to identify causes that need additional funding, training, things like that?
Oh, that's actually quite a perceptive question. And I apologize if you hear a little ding. So I'm currently at the Social Innovation Summit in Atlanta, which is great, and we can talk about that later. But essentially, what your question to me, my interpretation is sort of like, what do you do as Chief Partnerships and Program Officer? And how do you do it? And what does your role entail? So I love that because what's really exciting to me, and the reason I continue in this role today is because it really allows me a lot of flexibility in order to be dynamic and to change and evolve as the needs and goals of our grantee partners change and evolve. So, and credit to, the leadership at the foundation and our president and CEO, there's really this idea of how can we be of service to the grantee partners who are the ones really in community and doing the work. And honestly, how can we get out of the way
Oh.
as their partners, right? Because honestly, it's who knows best who's living in the community right there and has the solutions. So
Yeah.
with that sort of mindset, my role then becomes as Chief Partnerships and Program Officer, to your point, trying to take our set of resources that we are stewarding, and it is a defined set. It's not as if there is an endless source of this revenue to divert. So for me, it's taking those resources that we are stewards of and then determining, okay, if our mission is to nourish and transform the lives of children who face adversity, and if we have determined focus areas about where we can be of most and greatest and highest service, being nutrition ed and school food, indigenous food justice, and the serious fun children's network, then we sort of figure out based on that, and we run on an annual basis at our foundation because of that model where the profits come over to the foundation,
Yeah.
and that's what we are using as resources, really figuring out where are the innovative and dynamic and needed challenges and opportunities that our grantee partners are surfacing. So what's exciting is every year or two, we try to, in earnest, strategize about some sort of open call, some way to be really equitable and invite anybody and everybody who has a nonprofit organization, maybe it's a tribal organization or a school that fits those areas, those focus areas, so that we can really pool resources and try to make a greater outsized impact in those areas. So with that strategy in mind, opening up, inviting, those that have an idea they want to suggest, reviewing those with the help of external community members, leaders in the fields, peers, to get advice, opinions, guidance, etc. So it's really a participatory experience
Yeah.
and looking at that good guidance and wisdom and thinking, okay, where can these dollars do the most good? Again, with community.
Yes.
And so currently we have a number of grantee partners and they're on the website and I can share that link on the Newman's Own Foundation website of all the current grantees that we have. And it's really quite exciting because they're doing everything from like wellness in the schools, working in
Mm.
different school districts and regions on things like scratch cooking and
Oh, yeah.
really fresh farms based in the Mid-Atlantic region, working on things like school garden and integrating curriculum, nutrition
Mm.
education curriculum into the classroom, to regenerative agriculture, Dream of Wild Health, working
Wow.
on indigenous ways of knowing and bringing that into regenerative agriculture. So kids are understanding the cycle of not only where their food comes from, how it gets to them, but also the bigger picture and the ecosystem. So a lot of that work is just really exciting. And I will just make a plug for all the listeners out there. And Tim, you probably have thoughts on this too. I invite the need is there. The need is greater than ever. I will just say the grantees are telling us based on cuts that they're facing from not only philanthropic donors who are trying to double down, but also federal and local government cuts, just the world as it is having greater need. The challenges related to food insecurity and children, one in five households, right? Food insecure when it comes to kids. And so really the need is there and is there a will to create that change? And that's what we're really focused on. And through fundraising and through partnerships and through really smart and leveraged usage of those dollars, trying to get communities what they need to do and find the solutions that they know best.
Yes. That is such admirable and critical work. And there were some initiatives you mentioned, Emily, that the regenerative approach that I have not heard that practice before, but that just sounds fascinating. And helping children understand how, the whole process of how the food gets, how it's grown, shipped, gets to them, that, yeah, such a need to educate and raise awareness.
Agreed, agreed.
Yeah.
And communities are doing incredibly dynamic things and really making every dollar count. So,
Mhm.
it's such an important theme and topic about what you're sharing on your podcast and the learnings that this community is bringing together to really help with these social impact issues.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I would love to pivot here a little bit,
Sure.
Emily. In addition to the significant work you do with the Newman's Own Foundation, you are the founder of A Priori, which is also, I believe, on your LinkedIn bio, and people can learn about it through the website as well. I'm happy to share those resources when your interview goes live. I'm just curious, what led you to launch this important entrepreneurial initiative? What can you share with the audience about AI Priori and how they can find information?
Sure. I know it is a little bit of a head scratcher. People are like, wait, what? But I promise you there is a connection.
Totally.
Thank you for asking. So back in 2020, started just getting an inkling. And I was in philanthropy at the time, working, as I mentioned, with a funding collaborative and leading that in communities on health. And just starting to learn more and being curious about AI technology and machine learning and what could that do for the philanthropic sector. And,
Mm,
to bring the conversation full circle, these entrenched, pressing, complex challenges like social determinants of health. And we're talking about
yeah.
like, how do you address food insecurity, transportation access, maternal and child health issues, these very, very deeply rooted and entrenched issues. So again, not looking for some sort of magic wand to wave, but really looking at AI technology and thinking, we're struggling on resources for X. Could this technology perhaps address X or Y or Z? So really just started tinkering and exploring. And to be honest, back in 2020, when these conversations, and I was just learning and I'm asking questions, you know, perhaps part of it was me not necessarily knowing what questions to ask, but I'll also say back in 2020, a lot of the philanthropic community that I talked with, it just wasn't on the radar. And so it was, and this is pre-ChatGPT, Claude, right? Pre-Gemini. And so the questions, or excuse me, the responses that I was getting to my questions about like, oh, are you interested? Are you looking at this? Are you integrating? No, not really. And no, we're not really funding. We don't fund tech. And so
Oh,
that was where the conversation stopped, which that made sense at that time, like looking back. Now where we are, and all of us are at least somewhat exposed and knowledgeable, and it's in the headlines. I
yes.
think now if I could go back in time, I would have said to myself, like, a different perhaps framing and been a little bit wiser to frame it as like the technology is not in and of itself a end all be all solution or magic wand, but rather the mindset shift that this is bringing about. How we in the social sector could be more efficient, effective, and honestly more equitable in
Mm,
our work, which, all three of those E's, I think most people in the social impact space ascribe to one of those, if not
yes.
all three and more.
Yes.
So really that mindset shift is what really now in hindsight, I'm realizing captured my imagination. So
Mm,
I'm there tinkering. I actually stepped away from philanthropy for about a year to just spend time working on this and trying to figure out what was gnawing at me about this being something that could be an unlock for the field.
mm.
And I will say, 3 months after I left my job, ChatGPT came on the scene, and I
Oh,
thought, oh, wow, I'm sunk. This was maybe not the most responsible decision. But I say that in jest because I really, I was very fortunate actually and able to, with pre-planning, carve out some time for myself. So to answer your question, the whole North Star of AI priori and why it's connected I realized I was looking for and driven by this passion to figure out how can I center community voice
mm,
in AI generated responses.
yeah.
That to me was the question. So it wasn't about this tool or that, algorithm or this, wraparound. That was not what was interesting me. What interests me is that question about centering community voice in AI generated responses. Can we solve for that? If we could solve for that, I think there would be the opportunity for systematic changes in philanthropy and in the social impact sector. So that's what I was tinkering on. And that's what AI Priori is building. And we have, some tools and devices and a journal article out because again, this was all about sharing the learning as we go. So, had a great piece in foundation review and getting to do talks like this with you and talks at different conferences, just trying to share the learnings, share this mission, share tools that would be helpful, and really invite nonprofits and social sector and community leaders to the AI table because it's going to
Mm,
take all of us to figure out that question.
very true. Yes. And I was struck, Emily, you mentioned the three E's earlier.
Hmm.
I'm curious, and this is uh, a follow-up question, not on the script for today's slate of questions, but how have you seen AI writ large or AI Priori itself, your company, move the needle to make this landscape more equitable for community organizations?
By no means claiming success on that front. It is a constant and
Yeah,
daily conversation that needs to happen and that we need to ask ourselves, are we doing what we said we were going to do and are we doing enough on that front
yeah,
as social sector leaders? And I will say to your point about sort of how has this progressed and what is the role of AI Priori and myself in this, at a meta sort of bigger picture level, I think all of us, by engaging in this conversation and
mhm,
asking these questions, that's step one. I think, and
yeah,
that is probably the most sort of important on ramp because if you
yeah,
don't ask the question, you're never going to get to the answer or even try. So I will say we have, through my work, I'll just say broadly speaking, because it shows up in different formats. I think it's worth a pause because whether or not it is explicit and obvious, AI technology is embedded in many of the daily things, tasks, activities we do, even
yeah,
on a Zoom,
yes,
even when you join and somebody's transcribing something, or even when you're in Microsoft Word, for example, and you get that little pop-up saying, would you like a synthesis?
yeah,
I Google things all the time and I appreciate the AI synthesis, right? So
yeah,
whether or not we're explicit and we are being intentional about it, it is present and around us.
yeah,
And so I think just you asking this question is so just, it reminds me and gives me pause. That's something we can all do to move the needle in a small and yet meaningful way. I would say then taking that a step further with AI Priori and this again, North Star of centering community voice in AI, that's my sort of contribution to the field and the sector about saying, not everybody is in a position to build a tool or to,
right,
design things or to host convenings or to go have a conversation and lead a workshop on, how can you lead an AI pilot? What are the questions you should ask, right? Not everybody has that luxury. So I try to take it upon myself as something I can at least contribute
mhm,
in my small way to build tools that are going to be meaningful for the sector. For example, with AI Priori, we actually worked with several foundations to actually test, pilot, and also community members with permission and compensation, might I add, to figure out if we're going to, look at things like AI-driven grant sort of review aids. So
mm,
grant application review aids, you get 1,000 grant applications, right? How are you still manually reviewing that? By no means do I think anybody should take the human out of the loop, meaning humans should always be reviewing this. Very
yeah,
important. But
definitely.
I'm also saying, can AI be a backstop? Can
Right,
AI give you an added pair of eyes,
right,
help you with synthesis? I mean, just a very practical issue that from a fundraising perspective too, might I add, right? Like you're writing grant proposals, you're writing pitches, et
mhm,
cetera. If you could, similar to whether you're the grant seeker or you're the funder, if you have 100 past applications that you've submitted or 100 that you've received, right?
yeah,
As a human reviewer, maybe you've reviewed 12, 20, 50. Maybe you've reviewed 50 over time. Has anybody reviewed all 100? Right?
right, yeah,
So even using AI as a backstop to say, okay, I've reviewed, my other colleague has also ask AI in minutes to pull that synthesis on XYZ trends. I'm curious, what about
yeah,
this? What about? And let's use that as a conversation starter so I can at least go through and not look for a needle in a haystack. I'm now looking with a little bit more intent.
It's
I'm
true.
using a little bit more of and this is really where the conversation is going, my sort of creativity, my curation, my ability to discern. I'm using some of that lived experience and what I know from my breadth of experience in to drive insights about future leaning work and ideas that are not
Mm.
yet happening or possible. If I can use AI to help me tell what was, I am now in a much better position to think about what can be.
Yeah.
And so that's really at the end of the day where I see AI supporting social impact in a more effective, efficient, and equitable manner that keeps people and community at the center and in the loop.
Terrific. That was such a thorough and
Oh my gosh,
informative
did I go too
answer.
long? I
I
went too long.
like
Is that coded?
that
You went
was
too long.
no, that was great.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think having thought leaders like yourself dream up, see what works, connect with others, and try to innovate for good is really a needed part of our sector. So, yeah. Um, I would love to give a few minutes at the end of this interview if you want to talk a bit about the Social Innovation Summit. My last question in the slate of questions.
Sure.
I like to occasionally ask guests about leadership examples they've seen in their careers early on, what they've learned, and how do they maybe model some of those good and helpful leadership examples to the teams they manage. And I came across this concept called leadership by water rather than by fire from Professor Preston Nee, who is an interpersonal communications thought leader. And he examines organizational and cross-cultural challenges to effective collaboration in the workplace. So, Emily, as your career has progressed, are there leaders that come to mind that exemplified this concept of leading by water? And what have you maybe sought to emulate from their examples as you have progressed in your career and lead teams yourself?
That's a really important question to ask, I think, in today, especially with the generational shifts in the workplace happening,
Yeah.
with what's happening external facing outside of the workplace, because we bring all that to our jobs. We bring for better or for worse, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that sort of holistic approach that you're talking about with the water, as I understand it, right? This
Yeah.
idea that the flow, and it's constant, it's
Yes.
durable, it's ever present, but that is its power. So while it may flow and ebb, right? Is that the
Yes.
correct?
That's
Okay,
yeah.
wonderful. Yeah, I found it so inspiring. So I do actually have a moment where, it really stuck with me with my time with Steve and Jean Case. And I will
Yeah.
say I saw it again with my current CEO, Alex Amuel at Newman's Own Foundation. She has an entrepreneurial background too. I think that might be one of some of the connective tissue between those three leaders. But what their leadership impressed upon me in this water and fire dichotomy that you raised, they all inspire, encourage, and cultivate a culture where you are invited to explore curiosities.
Mm.
And I have to tell you, I bring this up because I hope it's helpful.
Yeah.
I have to catch myself because I will get into a daily, I'm going to call it a rut, to be honest, where I'm
Mm.
like, email, meeting,
Yeah.
troubleshoot, put out this fire, etc. And then like catch your breath and then like back to it, back to the grind. And, go onto your Asana project plan. Where am I? What deadline? And you
Yeah.
forget to make, because you have to make space to find those things that pique your interest or that may not be directly related and explore those, learn, teach yourself something new. Catch yourself when you don't know what something means and ask, right? And like inquire about something that is of interest at the water cooler, so to speak, or
Right.
in a team meeting. Take that 30 seconds. I sometimes forget to do that, and I feel depleted, to be
Mm.
honest, mentally and personally and emotionally. And I'm like, what gives me joy in my work, and bring it full circle with fundraising and with partnerships, finding those unexpected and non-traditional connections so that you get that outsized impact, which is what every one of your listeners, I'm sure, is doing. To find those intersections, you have to know where to look and how to spot it.
Yes.
And in my head, what Steve Case, Gene Case, and Alex Samuel, and other leaders, I will say, but those three in particular have taught me and impressed upon me is that is a skill. You
Yeah.
have to know how to discern what is norm, what is non-obvious, what is something special, what is something worth your time. And it may not be obvious in the moment. So how do you identify X, remember to store it and file away, and then most importantly, when the moment occurs, you're ready to retrieve that and then connect the two? Because great ideas are great for a reason. They're
Yes.
not commonplace. They're not normal. They're not everyday and expected. And so to make that and to do that consistently and repeatedly for social impact issues, which, as we said, complex,
Yeah.
entrenched, if they were
Yeah.
easy to solve, we wouldn't be here today.
That's true.
So having that skill to be able to spot that, find it, explore those curiosities, and make that time, it is truly a gift about that culture that they have curated. And that is something about that water, because it is ever present. It could happen on a street corner. It could happen in a Teams meeting where you're not expecting it, but you have to know when to spot it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. And as you were talking, Emily, I was imagining that spotting it, seeking for those connective tissue ideas and people that may be happening where you're at right now at the
Very nice
socialization.
transition, Tim.
Yeah,
Very nice.
thank you. I try. So you're at the Social Innovation Summit. I'm curious, really, I didn't prompt you ahead of time, so whatever you want to share about your time there, I'd love to hear a little bit about it, please.
Oh my goodness. It's a really great convening, bringing together cross-sector social impact leaders. So there's nonprofits, there's corporate teams, there's
Mm,
everything in between, all coming together to try to find moments of collaboration and inspiration to carry the work further. And there's some global, but for my experience, it's a lot of domestic US based, just from my personal experience here. But I will say what has been exciting is finding sort of, it actually is a great transition to your point that you just made, because, you're in a space where there's, I think 800, maybe more. I hope I
oh,
got the number right.
yeah.
Social impact leaders from across sectors that are thrown together. So when you're in the coffee line, when you're, going to the next session, you're just meeting people, and making that time to say hello. And I will say some of the unexpected things have come up. I actually was right before I came to talk to you.
Mm.
I was very lucky. Steve Harvey, comedian,
Oh,
philanthropist,
mm,
mentor. He's wonderful, and he was leading a keynote session. And something that stuck with me, number one, his candor. I just want to give him a
mm,
shout out. His candor was exceptional and very timely, because a lot of conferences these days, for good reason, people, I think, feel as if they have to stay on script.
yes.
Steve did not, and credit to
Mm,
him. But one of the things he said that I think would be relevant here, and that you might spark some ideas for you, Tim. He was like, a lot of companies these days and organizations, funders writ large, I'm not even going to say companies, funders writ large, look for ways to say no and
uh,
not invest in communities. And he was talking about the underlying, I don't mean to put words in his mouth, just to be clear, but I interpreted it as, you know, very long grant applications,
yeah,
very long grant reporting, jump through hoop one to get to hoop two, to get to hoop three. And
yeah,
maybe we'll fund you. Oh, we funded you for 2 years. I'm on to the next thing, right? And so some of
right.
these are cliches, and this is by no means every funder out there. There's so many great funders who are very trust-based and want to make it work for grantees and meet them where they are. But
Mm,
Steve's point was it was just in this time and age when there are external forces that are counter to a lot of the missions and values of organizations that want to support and work with communities, and are running counter to what communities see for themselves as a way that they could thrive and pathways for success. When you have external forces running counter to that, it's ever more important and imperative that companies, foundations, and other funders, high net worth individuals included, are really looking for ways to say yes. Look for
Right.
ways to say yes. Don't look for ways to say no, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, just personally speaking, it just resonated so much. It was such a short comment, but it stuck with me and something from the Social Innovation Summit that I'm sharing
Yeah.
with your listeners, and a plug for Steve Harvey because I thought he was fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your interpretation and your takeaway, Emily. And I hope you have a great rest of the Social Innovation Summit. And I have found our conversation, all of your thoughts warm, inspiring, thoughtful. I so appreciate you making time today for us to
Thank
connect.
you. Thank you, Tim. This was so fun and
Yes.
I really enjoyed it and happy to help. And if folks want to continue conversations, want to reach out or whatnot, happy to connect.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'll put that in the post when we air it. So Emily, thank you again very much for your time today. I'm honored to have you as a guest. Really quickly for our audience, you can find Emily Yu's conversation across the various platforms you've been familiar with over the last 4 years. When the interview airs this summer on LinkedIn, there'll be a link to the YouTube portion, Spotify, Podbean, as well as thanks to my 100th guest, Luis Diaz of WISE, WIZE, and the Donor Participation Project. He is sponsoring my website, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. So you can look for Emily's conversation on those channels. Thank you, everyone, for your support. And Emily, I wish you a great rest of your summit.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.